So here today, I do have a good friend, Hugo, who is from Portugal. And although we both speak Portuguese, obviously, we shall we shall record this interview in English for the sake of the public, which is going to listen to us. Hugo is a strategists global partner working in Portugal with quite nice experience in the automotive industry, working with innovation and leadership and what he calls organizational engineering too. So welcome, Hugo. Let's begin our chat.
Okay, thank you, Tiago. I hope you are okay and safe. And let's do it.
So let's begin our discussion about this so-called new normal. We've been discussing this subject with lots of people, consultants, executives, clients, partners across all over the world. And the idea is not to have the crystal ball to discover what is going to happen exactly, but as strategists, we do have the responsibility and the task, let's say, to figure out some paths for our organization. So what is your big picture about this next chapter of our lives?
Yeah, I have some thoughts about it, and I can divide that in two approaches. One that is more internal in terms on how we as strategists and how our organizations can scope themselves and to analyze themselves in terms of strategic capabilities. And the other one, that's the one I'm going to start. It's about the world and the shifts that are proceeding at this moment. So the new normal is a very happy term because the new normal, or the normality that we are used to, probably will have a little more pace and a little more speed than we are used to. So, for example, I think the new normals, instead of, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, will only be alive for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. So in the next 4 months, you will have a new normal. And then probably in January of 2021, you will have another new normal. So I think here the main secret is, as you said, not to get the answer from the crystal ball, but perhaps asking or trying to work with the crystal ball, that is strategy, which kind of scenarios could happen. So in terms of planning, I think here the main issue is for ourselves as strategists to focus on scenarios. And then we can draw everything that can happen if one of the scenarios is established. So you will have, I don't know, scenario A, B, C, and D, from light to hardcore or heavyweights, okay? And then you can ask ourselves, okay, what will happen within ourselves in this scenario A, and what will happen in the world in this scenario A, and which kind of approaches and actions and decisions probably could be the best for that scenario. So I think that we have to focus on the divergent scenarios that will happen. And this is a kind of a paradox. It's like we have to focus on everything. It's a sentence that doesn't make that much sense. And this relates to our inner personality and our inner capabilities as strategists. Because now we cannot rely only on data. We cannot rely only on what our things are expected to happen in terms of logic, but we must also be prepared in terms of knowledge, in terms of relational approaches and interactions and meaningful conversations. And why not even emotionally, we must be prepared to shift a lot. So our references will shift on a monthly or quarterly basis. So, and this is a very hard effort for people that are expecting to get all the answers from data and from analysis. So I would think that accepting that things will be impermanent and things will shift and get many shapes in terms of how things will happen, which kind of technologies will work, which kind of interactions will work, etc., etc. So I think we have to be able to construct a puzzle and then use the puzzle for the present context. And if the present context has many, how can I say this, many impactful changes, then we must break out the puzzle, try to figure out which kind of pieces are missing, which kind of pieces we don't need anymore, and then build again the puzzle. So I will think this will be to, I don't know, see the overview, catch the helicopter, see which kind of scenarios can eventually happen, build the puzzle, implement the puzzle, and then probably tear down the puzzle again and not be sad about it. So we must just accept, construct, adapt. I think this is, for me, it is the main takeaways that I get from the near future. And I don't ever speak about the future in terms of medium timings, because I think it is it is an effort that probably is not the best one to focus our energies on.
Nice. I can see, listening to you, I can see that we turned it into we came from a VUCA world into a mega VUCA world. For example, when you said that we've got to focus not only on one scenario, and it's a kind of paradox, as you said. It reminds me the ambiguity of the acronym of VUCA, no?
Exactly.
So we've got to handle even better this ambiguity of the world. And the volatility just increased, not only market volatility, but these changing of thoughts and priorities also. And I like this image that you put on the puzzle to arrange the pieces, but to be prepared to rearrange it often. Let me ask you something. I know you've got some nice experience in developing leaders, and that's a subject that I love too. Are our leaders, speaking about businesses and companies in general, are our leaders well prepared to this not only VUCA but mega VUCA world? Or shall we face the fact that although we are speaking a lot about this acronym and other buzzwords like agility and so on, are we as business leaders prepared for this new normal?
I think in the short term, I think that we have evidence that leaders are responding to this crisis in a good way. And for the short term, I think things are going okay. Yesterday, I was writing a draft of my next article in my blog, and I was writing about that, because we are in a transition from an emergent state to a whatever state that will happen. And when you have emergencies, you have a common sense of urgency. So the priorities are well established because it's human lives, and we must do something, or else we cannot survive as a species, or probably we have to come up together to save our companies. So although we are living in an emergency state, it is rather simple and easy to people to get along and to people to get on the same boat. So, and as your priorities are very, very, very crystal, your egos, your processes, your bureaucracy, your team relations or team vices, they almost disappear. and everything in a very organic way, or everyone in a very organic way, can work together and with results. So I think that a proper sense of urgency, and we now live with a very great sense of urgency, normally cleans up the noise, the internal noise and the organizational noises that obviously the leaders sometimes are responsible for creating. The big question is that we cannot live in emergency state, and we cannot cope with adrenaline and resilience and with, I don't know, understanding forever. So there will be a time where people will wear out, where people will regress, I don't know, to fighting with each other, or to try to get their interest instead of the others, etc., etc. So for that second period, I really don't think that most of the leaders are prepared. Why? Because the sense of urgency will not be enough to cope with all the challenges that people and organizations will have to have, because people will be tired, organizations will be tired, liquidity will be low or even none. Trying to sell things will be very, very, very hard, and try to work with a mindset of resilience and a mindset of optimism will also be difficult. So at that point, that organic sense of urgency that is COVID must be created or must be developed in a positive way by leaders. And that requires emotional and relational competences that most of the leaders don't have, because they didn't need to, because the market was based on processes, on products, on services, on capital, on marketing. Now we are, and now companies will be based on resilience, will be based on common understanding, will be based on consensus. And that requires a very, very different leadership style. So you will have to trust your employees or your team, because they are at home sometimes doing their work, and you cannot see if they are doing things right or wrong. If they are doing things right, you have to congratulate them in a different way, not only by money. If they are not doing things right, we must also understand that people are also having many stress, they are frightened, so they need some kind of mentoring or some kind of coaching approach that probably was not needed in the early days or in the days before COVID. So perhaps the leader will have to transform itself into a mentor or a coach, and probably start supporting more and starting to direct less. And this is a very difficult transformation and shift for some people. Some people are very, very, very okay with it. Those are the people that or leaders that I would say that, I don't know, they work in the sense and respond approach. But for the leaders that work in the command and control approach, I do believe that they are not ready for this kind of pace, or for this kind of mega VUCA that you were saying. Because the mega VUCA is like a volcano where unexpectedly lava is coming down. And the only thing that we can do, we cannot stop the lava. The only thing that we can do is direct the lava. So we must dig up holes or pathways in order to the lava to not kill ourselves. And how can we take advantage of the energy of the lava? And for that, you have to dig up the proper paths and build the proper roads for the lava to spread around, like a river.
Nice metaphor. Nice metaphor. Okay, so speaking about leadership, the first stress test. Well, it's a very general question, of course, but as you said, in the first test, we are okay. We are dealing in a nice way. We are handling the urgent questions, but in the long term, we shall face some difficulties surrounding psychology, looking for the endurance and stamina for developing human relations in this new normal, in this remote working environment and virtuality that probably we are going to stay for a while and maybe for good. How could leaders prepare and develop? Well, firstly, which would be the skills to develop for these long-term circumstances, and how could leaders develop these skills as fast as they could?
Yeah, we can start with one of the skills that I think it's common in us, Tiago. That is strategic capabilities. One thing is strategy in a more theoretical or framework approach. Another thing is the ability for you to have what I could call responsive strategy. That is designing which could be the possible solutions and which could be the best decisions for each scenario, and being able to communicate that with your team and to get feedback and to create a version 2.0 or 3.0 for each kind of the scenario. And then to be able and to be open to share that strategy with the team and empower the team in order to them to implement the strategy. Because one of the main issues of strategy is not designing and talking about it. It's the implementation and the follow-up. Because normally strategy is very, very far from the real life, as I say, because it's all the CEOs and the CFOs and the CXOs, etc., etc. And now I believe that for these times, strategy must be for all of us, even for the guy that is in a motorcycle to deliver pizzas, as I say. So one thing is strategy capabilities, the ability that you have to think and to design which kind of solutions would be the best. The other one is also the team development. It's more or less the acknowledgement for leaders that probably they don't have the capability and all the information and all the views that are necessary to create several scenarios, because you have a bias of your opinions, of your knowledge, etc., etc. So you need a positive confrontation. You need critical approaches to everything that you think that can be right, and that probably would have to engage the need of emotionally. Leaders can be, I don't know, more open to listen to others. Instead of saying what to do, perhaps develop abilities of asking powerful questions or using the questions in order to get the best answers for everyone. I don't know, active listening. So sometimes one employee or one team member can have a very, very, very good idea. And sometimes because of terms of personality or because he's shy or whatever, that great idea doesn't come up into the table. So I think it is the role of the leader to engage meaningful conversations, both with extroverts and introverts, in order to provide that every possible solution is on top of the table today, because we need all the possible solutions that we can have in order to create and design the most complete scenarios.
Okay, let me take the opportunity to speak with you about the automotive industry. I would like to listen to you about, well, we were already passing through some turbulence and several industry shifts in this in this sector. Not only, I think, because of the electric vehicles coming, but for example, when we see the changing behavior, the consumer changing behavior, respecting the new generations, for example, that mostly don't look at the cars as the same way the baby boomers, let's say, would value it. How is the automotive industry dealing with the shifts that they were already dealing with, but now, moreover, the coronavirus and this new normal that we are trying to figure out?
Yeah, Tiago, as you said, the automotive industry was having already some kind of challenges in terms of electrification, in terms of Uberization of the vehicle. I don't know. For example, in the near future, you probably could. Okay, I want to rent a Volkswagen for 4 days, and then I want to rent a Mercedes for my weekend. If I go to, I don't know, to Monaco. And then I will want to rent a Ferrari if I want to go to London. So the Uberization of the vehicles was one of the possibilities. Also, in terms of autonomous vehicles and its challenges in terms of safety, in terms of cybersecurity, etc., etc. But all those challenges were kind of being held by a wall that was consuming trends, because people always see the vehicle as some kind of property. And with COVID, and with remote work, people understand that, okay, I do like to have a car, I use a car, but probably I can live without the car. Especially if I don't need to go to my company for 5 days per week, and I just need to go for 2 days per week. So probably it could be reasonable to use public transportation if you have that on your city or on the place that you live. So I think one of the main barriers of the shift, the very, very impactful shift of automotive, that was the habits of the owners of the cars, now was put into check. Okay, so automotive now will have to think even more about mobility and not about property. They will have to think with mobility in a safe environment, and not only in safety in terms of tires or brakes. Okay, so I think that the automotive world will have to try to, I don't know, to see which kind of similar industries in terms of mobility could be good partnerships. Because, for example, there is the possibility of automotives being run by kinetic highways, or you can have like a drone like automobile, where you don't walk on the streets, or you don't drive on the streets or in the roads, but you are just transported, like that movie in The Fifth Element, or all the dystopias that we see in some movies. So I think here the automotive must shift in three key aspects. One, environment, because it is proven that if the world stops, the planet can regenerate in a very, very quick rate. Second, which kind of habits the consumers will have in terms of transportation, and how can the automobile or the mobilities company help. And the third one is, does it make sense for the vehicle, for the automobile, to transform itself to another thing? I don't know, like an hybrid. where you, instead of tires, you have engines, where you, instead of, I don't know, multimedia, you have dashboards. And instead of owning a car, you just pay for the service like you do with Uber or something like that. So I think these are the three main challenges that COVID put very, 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 in a very impactful way in front of the auto companies.
Yeah, and I think that this is a quite complex issue because it's not only a challenge for the companies, but for governments too. For example, here in Brazil, we do have lots of employees in automotive factories, as well as in other countries. And there are also the unions, the negotiations between private and public sector. There is the unemployment rate and the skilling or the reskilling challenge for the next years, moving from some kinds of jobs that doesn't exist anymore to new tasks, technology, and so on. So for me, the automotive industry shift is like a symbol of the post-industrial world that we were speaking about before COVID-19. And now, if I may change a little bit the term, not only a post-industrial world, but a post-COVID economy. As you said, there is some changes in behavior, not only because of new generations that don't see the vehicle as an asset, as their parents used to feel it, but because the entire mobility of our cities are changing, and perhaps the energy and the environmental and ecological issues are going to get a bigger role, even a bigger role that already we were listening to it before COVID-19. So COVID-19 is not only a pandemic issue, I think, but a turning point in terms of economy. And as a strategist, I think, especially dealing with businesses, there is something very important for us to help our clients, for example. How is going to be not only the new markets that were already shifting, but how can we think about disrupting this next stage? As you said before, the puzzle must be arranged and rearranged and redesigned several times. The volatility has increased. So taking the automotive industry as a symbol, we probably shall develop not only different scenarios, as you said before, Hugo, but also to be used to design and redesign and constantly try to develop new markets for this new generation that doesn't have a regular or a fixed reference for their own values. I was reading an article these days about the generation of the children that is now living with this COVID situation. They are speaking about the C generation, and they don't have the same feeling that we have facing these moments. Of course, they were born, let's say 5 years ago, for example, and they are beginning to notice and to become aware of the world with this situation. So probably as vehicles or as cars were a kind of a symbol, luxury symbol or an asset for previous generations. For the future generations, which are going to be the values, which are going to be the assets, which are going to be the desired goods to achieve, or the desired experiences when we think more broadly about customer behavior. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was listening to you, and I was thinking that probably the present and the future values will not be materialized in terms of assets and in terms of property. I think will be materialized in terms of experience and in terms of living a life in a more or less balanced way. So I think people here with COVID, I think most of the people understood that probably they don't need to own and to buy those many things that they would, or they were buying, in order to have some kind of experience. Because we one of the things that makes the humankind evolve are restrictions. So if you don't have access to something that you are used to, you will try to find some kind of way or some kind of experience that will replace that fulfillment. So I would say that probably the experience of having a balanced way of living would be one of the most important values for the generations that are growing up now. I think people are, I don't know, of our age and our generation, I think we already have that kind of, how can I say, that kind of dream and that kind of approach through life. The thing is that the society is not yet designed in order to accommodate our expectations for my generation, for our generation, Tiago. But I think that the way and the small shifts that we are doing in terms of environment, I don't know, in terms of health food, in terms of the balance that will happen between working within a company and work at home, probably we'll come up to the conclusion that we don't need to be 5 days per week working, that if we organize ourselves and the organizations focus on what's important and necessary for itself and for its customers, probably you will need only 3.5 days or 4 days of work, etc., etc. So I think that this kind of awareness will create some kind of millions of mini actions throughout the world and throughout the organizations. And probably those 5-year-old boys and girls that are now growing up and being aware of themselves, probably they will have a world where they can materialize and they can deploy this kind of value, not based on material and ownership, but based on, I don't know, equality, distribution, and the knowledge that we don't have to own things and we don't have to be the best in order to fulfill ourselves and to be happy and to have a good life. So I think the values will shift for a more exterior signs of wealth or signs of, I don't know, impact, to some kind of values or some kind of world that will allow us to live in a balanced way, always pursuing for objectives, always doing our best to get to our objectives, but in a way that doesn't mean that we have to do everything to get to the end. So the means don't justify the ends. So I think these more or less subtle and more emotional values will prevail for this generation and for the future generations. And those are very, very, very difficult to map and to design in terms of strategy. So probably we would have to try to guess which kind of strategy we can have in order to create rapport, and not to create only product and services.
Yes, and as you said previously, the data-driven strategy is no longer so consistent as it was before. We've got to develop a lot of our imagination to visualize subjective possibilities. Yeah. Well, Hugo, you live in Europe, in Portugal, but you have traveled to several countries and worked worldwide. Let's try to discuss a little bit about globalization and international trade and maybe logistics too. There are many people speaking about a setback on globalization in general. What do you see about this difficult subject, which is international trade, global finances, international logistics and supply chains across the world?
Yeah, first of all, I think the COVID crisis, I think it is the ultimate proof that globalization exists. Because if you order a book from Amazon and 4 days later it comes up to your home, the COVID works the same way. If you get COVID in China and you get a plane, 3 or 4 days later it is in Europe, and 3 or 4 days later it is in US or Brazil, etc., etc. So I think the spread of the COVID only happened because we created very effective supply chains of products, but also of people. That's the first thing, that globalization exists and works. Now, what people are saying is that we are, how can I say this? We are doubting that globalization is a good thing because of what happens here with COVID. Most of the parts of globalization that are being shut down are not being in terms of political choice or monetary choices or market choices. They are being shut down in terms of health because people are afraid. So I think the globalization is direct, the impact or the fluidity of globalization is directly impacts on two things: trust and fear. Because if we are open to receive new things, I don't know, I just will give you an example. Probably 20 years ago, I would not have access to kiwis, for example, because they were grown in Brazil or New Zealand, and it was very, very, very expensive. So now, through globalization, I can be at my own country and at my own home and experience culture, products, services, and experiences of other countries. Okay, so I think here the success or the sustainedness of globalization will depend on the levels of trust and the levels of fear that will be happening at any time. This is the first thing. For example, in terms of trade and supply chain, because now we have a new topic or a new variable that is fear or trust, if you want. I don't know, people or countries or companies, they were not afraid to put a production line that was in Germany and to put them, I don't know, in the times previous to COVID, the companies or corporations, they were not facing a health risk or health problems if they ship production lines from England to or Germany into Sri Lanka or China or India or whatever. So the risks and the decisions were made in substantially money or profit approach or criteria. And that allowed that the supply chain started to grow and grow and grow and grow, and that we as companies and organizations and professionals become more efficient in order to create flow and to create less waste and better performance in supply chain. So we were very, very, very effective in terms of how we handle supply chain. But now performance is not the main criteria. The main criteria is safety. The main criteria is health. And probably because of that, we are able and probably we are open to compromise the effectiveness and the efficiency of the supply chains in order to people to stay healthy. So probably some products, some supply chains that are spread around the world, probably they will only be spread around countries that are safe, even if that is, if not the most cheap approach. Probably, I don't know, in automotive, you can have 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 tiers in order to produce a vehicle. Perhaps you will have, I don't know, 3 or 4. Perhaps verticalization of companies will be back again. I don't know, like a trend. Perhaps that verticalization probably, instead of being spread in safe countries, can be spread in terms of specialization. I don't know, plastics in Portugal, metal in Spain, software in, I don't know, Austria, and assembly in Germany. So I think that probably the supply chains will not be more efficient, but they will be built in rather non-traditional criteria. And that obviously will change the markets, because it's not about the labor costs, it's about the labor safety. It's not about the supply chain, probably. It will be about flexibility, that you are able to produce 5,000 per day because you have a spike on demand that is provoked by the mega VUCA world, and then you are prepared to be 1 or 2 months, I don't know, stopped because you don't have the market to produce and to distribute to the countries. So I think here the main conclusion is the criteria of doing business will not only be focus or efficiency, will be trust.
Yeah. And what about the regulations? Because we can see now the utilization of surveillance technologies, and of course the trade war between United States and China, the trust or the untrust between some governments, and specifically the regulatory issues on regard of data and internet. Isn't possible to, if I may, to add another variable here, because you spoke about performance, efficiency as the main topic before COVID, and now we do have, besides efficiency, also resiliency, let's say. But isn't it that maybe we shall add a third variable, which is regulation and the relations amongst countries into this topic of international trade?
Yeah, you are quite right. Because, and the regulations issue is also a paradox, and we will also, it probably will also be, how can I say, will be a very polarizing issue. Because, for example, I think good things have happened in terms of certifications and regulations. Because previous to COVID, you would need months in order to certify a face mask or a ventilator or something like that. And now you can do it on days or weeks. So I think in terms of products and services, I think that you will have a positive polarization, that things will go out in a more streamed way, in a more flowing way, in terms of guaranteeing that something that will help and create a good impact to the customer will be authorized to be delivered and to be marketed in a shorter way. Then you have other kinds of regulations that is about information, cybersecurity, and personal rights. For example, it is very easy in countries like, I don't know, China or Hungary or any kind of countries that have some kind of muscle approach in terms of politics. It is very easy to make people to comply with regulations. Stay at home. In China, it is more easier to accomplish that than in Portugal or in Brazil, because we live in democracies. We don't have some muscle regimes. In terms of data, because we still need data, and we still need data-driven approaches, for example, to analyze the virus and to create vaccines, etc., etc., and to see if everyone is doing the right stuff in terms of confinement. Some things that are done in China, like surveillance, digital surveillance, and using apps in terms of see where people are, etc., etc., they are not tolerated in democratic countries. So that's the negative polarization in terms of certifications and regulations. That probably, in order to achieve some kind of trust or some kind of control of the situation regarding the virus, you could be asked to, I don't know, to decline some of your individual rights and society rights in terms of protection. Here in Portugal, several apps are being developed in order to, and that they are apps that they track if you cross in the street or something like that with people that were in contact with the virus. It's strictly volunteered, but people are asking you if you want to show to others if you had the virus or not, and if you want to see if other people had the virus or not. And that's a shift, because we are full of ourselves in terms of our individuality and in terms of our intimacy. So I would say that in products and services, the regulations and lowering the bar in terms of demanding, I think it is okay. For me, is specific. In other kinds of regulations where you have personal data that can be used in terms, not good use, obviously, in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of your own individuality, etc., etc., that will be tricky. That will be tricky. In countries that like to live with common sense and common purpose, but also value the individuality. So I'm speaking about democracies. So I think those will be the kind of regulations that probably will have, as a society, to choose which part or which kind of niche of those rights we are, I don't know, we are able to deny ourselves or to decline.
Right. Well, it's been a very insightful dialogue, Hugo. But we are getting closer to the end. So I'd like to ask you a final message, maybe some recommendations, some final messages for leaders to to prepare and develop their organizations for this new normal?
Yeah, I think one of my, not recommendation, but suggestions or food for thought is that things, even in terms of strictly business, in terms of markets, and in terms of products and services, they have to be dealt within three frameworks: emotional, relational, and technical knowledge. We cannot rely only on data, on departments, on functions. I think that the success of the company's organization leaders and teams will rely on the ability of being curious about the world or about the waves that are coming, and be able to, in a very fast way, to deconstruct and construct again the puzzle that will be the surfboard for those waves until other waves come. And that probably will ask from people to be more autonomous in terms of their ownership, because I don't know, a company can be a very safe place because you have procedures, you have a place, you have your desk, you have your profile. And now we are probably, if you are going to work on remote more often, we are on our own. So we must be self-leaders of ourselves. So this would be my main keynotes.
Great. Well, this is great. Well, let's see when we can see airplanes and airports again as we did. I love to travel, and I've got to be honest, I miss airplanes. Let's see if we are going to meet each other in Portugal or in Brazil.
Yeah, for sure.
next time. And it was a quite nice chat. I thank you for your time, and let's keep in touch. And whatever you need. And whatever you need from Brazil, call us, okay?
Okay, same here from Portugal, Tiago. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the chat.
Okay, bye-bye, my friend. Bye-bye.
Bye, goodbye.